Welcome to That Didn't Work.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Table Babble. We've got some different faces other than Jason this week. I'm Percy, the conductor of this poop train. I think that's what I'm required to say at this point. And with me I've got somebody.
Mike?
Go.
Yeah, Mike. And this week, just because he's conductor of the poop train, I powdered my cockatiel for this.
He did. I saw it. It was disturbing.
My mouth is full.
Oh, that's Kevin.
That's Kevin. I'm Chris. I'm the quiet beetle.
As you can tell, this is a free-flowing show where we don't really care what happens.
Well, some of us are free-flowing.
As far as the media is concerned.
We're working on our first YouTube ban.
Working real hard on that. Yeah, so Table Babble is just kind of a talk show where we're gonna shoot the crap with each other, talk about gaming, and maybe do some goofy stuff along the way, and answer some questions.
Us? Never.
Goofy?
Never us. We don't do that.
Yeah, you can't possibly.
Oh, what? Sorry.
All right.
I'll never do
Well, on that
again.
note, I'm going to start the questions because we're already sinking the ship. So, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I have a question that is, it's more of a get to know us, who we are.
Okay.
Right? And it's not us as a channel, it's us.
Okay.
I'd like each one of us to go through and answer this question. What if you were arrested with no explanation? What do you think your friends and family would assume that you've done?
What would my friends... I committed a murder.
You committed a
I
murder.
guarantee you that that's what people think.
And your day job is?
Oh, I'm a pastor of a church.
Okay. So, I'm not thinking that's gonna... Okay, I wouldn't have gone there, but... All right, Chris.
Well, I have questions.
I was ignoring this.
That's because I wouldn't get arrested for okay, listen. If I do a crime, I'm not gonna get caught. So if I got caught, it's probably because I did a murder.
All right. I don't want to segue yet because Chris hasn't had a chance to answer. But Chris, what do you think people would assume you got arrested for?
Those tags and matters that do not remove under a penalty of law. I was framed.
But what were you framed for?
Removing the tags.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh. I'm into it. I'm here.
Maybe piracy? I'm talking about on the open
downloading?
ocean.
Okay. I was like,
Okay.
No, I'm probably talking about downloading. But maybe on the open
Now we
ocean.
draw a line there.
You wouldn't download a zoo bear, would you?
I would.
One of those infomercials.
Hey, can I write it?
I don't know.
I mean, if I could write that bear.
I was more making fun of those commercials.
I know, but if I could write that bear.
All right.
Were those answers you were hoping for, something along those lines?
You know what? I'm not expecting any particular answer whatsoever. This is people getting to see how our brains work.
So, Mike.
What's mine?
Yeah.
Grand Theft Twinkie.
Grand Theft. Man, I went for what do I actually think?
Well, we all had to go really light after you went straight to murder. So,
You went very dark. Right out of the
But I
gate,
wouldn't
very
get-
dark.
I mean, mine was still kind of serious, but...
But murder?
I don't want to murder anyone. That's just what I would get arrested
But the
for.
fact that that's the first
If
thing
I-
people come to?
No. It's that if I don't go off the deep end. So if I did, it was real
All
far
right.
off the deep end. You know what I'm saying? I don't do bad stuff, generally speaking.
I got it. All right. I can see why that would be... All right.
So and also people tend to know if I go for something, I go big. Like when we made a podcast, I went big. I've got 6 people to buy microphones and stuff. I didn't start small. So if I'm gonna go walk that lonely road of darkness,
Well, that's fair.
we're gonna start at murder.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll leave it be.
Okay, yeah.
Alrighty, Mr. Percy, do you have
This is
something
why
you'd
I
like to
don't play
discuss this
Assassin
week?
Rogues.
Well, you tried, but Rick shut you down.
No, that was
No,
inquisitive.
that was an intrigue. That was an inquisitive rogue. It's different.
Rogue is a rogue is a rogue is a rogue.
No. Oh, they're so different.
Oh dear God, yes.
of any D&D class.
Do they get to sneak behind something?
Rogue has the most variation.
Do they get some kind of surprise attack?
Well,
yeah.
they do have sneak attack, but it's not the same. Anyway, do I have a question this week? So, I did this week the second session with all of my wife's friends playing at a table together who had never played a role-playing game before. It was a very, very fun night. They were more cognizant this time around. And they did a lot more, like there's a lot more action this time. And so it's like her and 3 of her friends and all of their husbands. So I'm GMing for 7 people at a time at this table. And I handed out like one of my handouts that had like some symbols on it. And the wizard in the group tried to figure out like what the symbols meant. And so I told her what one of them meant. And she decided that her knowing what that symbol meant was licensed to do things with it. So I told her that it was a ley line. It was a symbol for what a ley line is, and what that is for them was it's a symbol for you can travel between dimensions here. And so they came to like this dimensional gateway that they couldn't reach, and so she decided like if we tattoo this on our foreheads, it will let us do this. And I let it happen because I thought that was awesome because the symbol did look a little bit like.
Was it a little phallic?
It was a little phallic.
All right. I figured I'd cut that conversation off right there on that one.
I wasn't going to take it. I wasn't even going to say the word. But yeah, it kind of looked like that. And so...
What, you don't want 20 minutes of dick jokes?
No, not this time.
Oh, damn.
That's for the comments.
But this is the question I have. How cool is too cool for the rule of cool? How far do you think a game should be allowed to go? Like, how much agency should players have over the game world? Because like that, I had to establish that like if you know the right rune and you tattoo it on your body, you can do the thing the rune lets you do, like in that game.
Well, I'll personally kick this off by saying I don't think a player's artistic license should be truly stipend unless it is going to wreck the game. If it's something where everybody's out to have fun and it makes the game more fun,
sure,
go for it. I don't care what it is. I think Daniel had a good example in a Call of Cthulhu game that he played. And for those of you that don't know about it, he's very proud of this story, but he had a character who was dumb as a box of rocks. And he had convinced himself that by eating paper that had words written on it, he could retain the knowledge. Well, he rolled a critical success on that roll, on his science roll. And the GM said, I'm going to allow it one time and one time only. So he ends up making himself incredibly sick on eating hundreds of pages of paper.
He only had one shot.
He only had one shot at it.
One opportunity.
Now, if I was the GM, I would have made him roll some kind of constitution at that point to see if he kept it all down, because then I would have said he lost his knowledge. But it was absurd, yes. But it's just, for a bunch of people sitting at a table having some fun, it generates laughs. Go for it.
What are some scenarios that you think have gone too far? So I'll say this. This is my take on it personally. If there is a mechanic in the game that allows for what they're trying to do, but their character doesn't have it, then I don't let it happen.
That's fair.
If that makes sense. Like,
that's very fair, yeah. Especially for the skill accounts we have to spend experience points to get, then it's not fair to let somebody else just do it and another person spend experience on it.
Exactly. If it's truly something that is like world building or is cool that the rules don't cover in any way, I usually let it through with some sort of caveat. But if there's some way to get that ability, I usually will either make it like, yes, that happens, but you maybe take some damage for doing it, or there's some way that I kind of mitigate them wanting to do it all the time.
Okay, so me personally as a GM, and I don't want to take this to a very serious topic, but there are oftentimes players who will allow certain extreme sides of themselves to come out in a game.
Yes. And
when I see that happening, that's where I kind of I really quickly draw a line. Things that, you can do something that's in poor taste. You can have a joke that's in poor taste. You can have something that goes on like that, and that's fine. That's just going to happen. But there are certain, and we've got somebody knocking on the window. But
Mike's going to continue this discussion while I go get the door.
But we've got some certain individuals that, and I hate to use the word, but there are gamers out there that will take situations into rape within a game. And again, I've seen that happen, and I've cut that off.
Yeah.
I mean, I get you. I understand that. Now, granted, if that's the character's mentality, they should probably be upfront about it when they make the character. But it also means you can punish them for doing something like that, because that is it's not okay in our world.
Nope.
So why?
You also have to make it not fun for other players there too, and I think that's where the line should be. You can do as far as you want until it starts being fun for the people.
Well, that's true, because sometimes it depends on like the game system in which you're playing. There are some games out there that it's built into the system. Like, granted, I don't recommend playing the game Fatal from another time and land, but that is an ingrained mechanic. Not that they're saying you should do it, but it is.
Well, I get that, but it's like, that's why I say, as a GM, if I see players crossing a line that I have a true problem with, I'm not going to sit there and allow it to continue to permeate in the game.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah. That's kind of where to me, the question was, how far is too far?
Yeah. I mean, no.
And to me, that was too far.
I mean, yeah, because definitely if they're trying to do it in scene in front of everybody, that's kind of scummy.
Sure.
All right.
So what I miss?
We don't want to rehash that one. We really don't want to rehash that one.
Sure.
It's almost as bad as the. Never mind.
Okay.
Whew. So, question that I have. Well, let's flip this around. Percy, what do you think is too far?
Well, like I said, if there's a mechanic in the game that covers it, so like if somebody, and this is like a common example, especially in 5th edition D&D, of like someone wants to, like, combat is looking tough. They know dual wielding exists. They're already using a longsword. The bad guy dropped a longsword. It's not a light weapon. They try to pick it up and dual wield it, but they don't have the feat that lets them do that. I don't usually let that happen. Like, it's too clumsy for them or something, because there's a feat you can get that lets you use non-light weapons as dual wield weapons. So that's like the rules example. But as far as like, I think I usually, when I'm making my world, have a sheet or two of like, these are the concrete details in the background that players can't affect or touch. If it doesn't break any of my world rules that I've made, I let it through.
Interesting.
But there's not, like, it's not ever a concrete answer, because every game that I play, even if I'm playing in Faerun, in D&D, or if I'm playing in like the actual Star Wars universe, like, I doctor it differently for each time. Like, each Star Wars game I play has Rakatans. They're never the same, because I like to play with the idea of what Rakatans are, because there's so little lore on them. It's like, I can make up what I want and just explore what if this, what if this.
The gray space. You like the gray space in canon.
I do. I like the gray space. And I like creating more gray space by creating alternate realities of stuff.
So like if, say, in the Star Wars example, you would allow them to, say, blow up the Death Star in the middle of construction.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's nothing in my headcanon that says, like, that's impossible.
Yeah, because you're running a game that's...
Exactly.
You're not running the movies. You're running your own universe.
Exactly. We're playing a game that is inspired by those things.
Yeah.
And some of those events are occurring as we go, but they don't have to go the way they went in the movies for me to be happy. And that was a tough place for me to get to, especially in Star Wars, as a GM, to be willing to let go of some of the canon. But I think once I did that, it made gaming more fun. It made playing that game particularly more appealing to me because then I'm not nervous about it. There are still some worlds that like I won't play a Middle Earth game, or I won't run one anyway, because I consider Tolkien's ground too sacred. And I don't want to mess any of it up. Like, I love that world so much, I don't want to do anything to sully what it is.
Right, but I would kind of counter that by saying enough of us know what is sacred within that game that if you put down a kind of a guideline to say we're playing in the side of this, we're not playing in the true storyline of this, then I don't think any one of us would go out of our way trying to find, you know, the main characters of Tolkien's world and try and interact with them while they're on their quests, right?
Sure.
We could very easily play within the realm of you know, who was it? The Northern Riders, right? When they've run off and have been banished, right?
Yeah.
You got different spaces.
I know all that's possible. But I've even sat down, and you know this, like I sat down to make a Genesis Middle Earth game. And I got like 3/4 of the way through making what I thought I wanted to do, and then I was like, I think that's going to butt heads with magic in this world. I don't think it's going to work. And like I got in my head about it. Like I get nervous messing with that world.
But okay,
I was gonna say it's really hard if you're that into it. My friend tried to run a Babylon 5 campaign, but he's really into the world, so he found it kind of hard. Well, let's put it in this timeline, put you on Babylon 5, but now these events happen, and you're like, I want to affect it. And especially if you have people at the table who are like, I know what's going to happen, and trying not to, mutter their way into it.
Yes.
But at the same time, if you know you're in that situation, it's kind of like, do I let them affect it? It's hard for some people.
Yeah.
And
that's how I am with Middle Earth, is like, I don't like to play in it because I don't feel like I could let much of the rule of cool apply.
No, I got you.
Because as people try to do things that may alter the way reality works in that world in my head, I wouldn't let it happen.
Right.
And the game would be less fun because of that.
Well, I mean, but you can have an entire campaign that's created around Mordor.
Sure.
Where you never even leave the gates of Mordor.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's impossible.
I mean, how much... let's go back into the stories. How much information has really been spread about the lands of Mordor?
Not as much as other places, but
right. So you could have artistic license to just go crazy in there, because it's just a bunch of, well, beings of evil. I mean, you could run essentially an evil campaign within that space, and have a grand time with it.
Orcs aren't evil; they're just trying to make their way in the world.
Orcs are abused elves. Come on.
So misunderstood.
I kid.
I'm gonna go with evil.
They are evil, but it's only because of abuse.
Yeah.
If Melkor hadn't got a hold of them,
my D&D book says that they are chaotic evil. Enough said.
They can be saved. Also, that's in general. They can be saved. We can save them. That's a campaign now. We're going to save the orcs of Mordor.
Kevin's excited.
I know.
Real excited.
Now I want to play that game. Saving the orcs of Mordor from themselves.
We're all paladins.
I'll teach you the way of goodness, young orc. All right, we're gonna move on. So I think there was a extension of a question that I had that's very similar to that, which is, do you limit as a GM playable races?
I don't. I build my world as I hear what players want. So like I'll come in with here's a shell, an eggshell, but we together will fill it up with what this thing is going to be. I don't like coming in with a lot of the world already built until I know what players like. And I think you guys, especially Mike and Chris, have experienced that when playing 7th Sea with me, where as we're playing, I'll start asking questions about what you'd like to see specifically, but I even, as we're playing other games, I'm listening for that kind of stuff. And then like 4 or 5 sessions later, you probably won't even remember you said anything about something, but then here it is, suddenly in the game doing things and interacting with you. So I don't limit stuff like that, or I don't even limit, like, if someone says they want a particular weapon. Mike, you got a super jetpack one time because I knew your character wanted things like that.
Well, he was a gadgeteer. Of course he wanted stuff like that.
Yes, but like...
We still didn't get to play with the favorite one.
No, we didn't. but like disruptor rifles and lightsabers and things like in Star Wars specifically, like I don't limit even stuff like that. I may like limit how you get it and whether or not you have it at the start, but I don't limit ideas because that helps to enrich the world with what players want to have.
Right. Well, and I guess my answer to that, and we can kind of go around here, but my answer to that as a GM when I do this is, in most cases, the answer is no, I'm not going to limit it. I have made it clear that when I do my Age of Rebellion, that because of the space that we're playing in, I don't want any character starting with any Force abilities, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the extent of what's going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that throughout the campaign something's not going to happen, or people aren't going to come up with those abilities. But at the very beginning, where this storyline starts, because it is based in an initial canon point, that where that starts, it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So again, my answer is it's really story dependent.
I'm in the same belief as that. It's story dependent. If you made your world and that race doesn't exist and you feel it does not belong, then yeah, you're going to limit it. Or maybe you just decided how the campaign's going to begin, and it's going to begin in a dungeon. There's probably not going to be a centaur, and you probably don't want to like feel like you limited someone for being a centaur down in a cave in a dungeon who can't get out now. And then you're like, well, you ready to make your second character? So
now I'm ready to find my way out.
But in general, it just depends. Like for an Exalted campaign I'm going to run, there's a couple of the backgrounds that I'm going to limit just because.
Sure.
For progression, it's really hard to say start people off and then have something like a tyrant lizard as their best bud going around that can topple pretty much anything around. Mm-hmm. And I do like a scaling up game as opposed to, even though that's the style of the game, I'm now an ancient war god fighting an entire army by myself. Mm-hmm. It doesn't lead to as much excitement as you putting someone in a position of making choices. But that's a little bit off topic. But yes, limiting it I think is best for if it's within the scope of how the narrative's going to start, or it's within the scope of the world that you're going to have them play in.
Yeah,
those are probably the only times.
Fair enough. Chris, thoughts?
Ditto.
Our man of few words.
Yes.
No, I do agree with that. I think that sometimes there's reasons for specific limits on things, again, due to story and world arrangements, and that should be a part of it a lot of times. But for the most part, I'm pretty open with a lot of things, unless there's a specific reason I don't want a specific thing there.
Yeah, which I get. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's any of that is bad at all. I want to say that. Like, I love playing in games where there are limits, because that makes me want to find those things.
Oh, we know, Percy. We know.
Yeah, you know. If you give me a clear crack, I will find it. And
you guys exploited a few cracks already. Yeah, but we're good.
Did we?
Yeah, you did.
In Call of Cthulhu?
Oh yes.
Let's talk about that.
I'm kind of curious what cracks we exploited.
What cracks did we exploit?
Okay, let's see. So without issuing spoilers. Without issuing spoilers, you were not supposed to have that kind of success trying to pick that lock, buddy.
Nice.
I mean, that's fair. I only have 30% in that skill.
I know.
I nailed it.
I know, which is the reason why I had to run through that. But I was like, okay, because I had about 3 or 4 quick little side scenes that would have been entertaining to go in with that. So it wouldn't have been where you guys felt like you had to chase certain clues all night long, versus having another path that would have sent you straight down the same pathway, but it just would have kind of brought it around a little bit differently.
Well,
like chasing clues.
onto something like that, because I have a question to pose of how do y'all feel about someone about taking narrative away from a player, like the role, like because you could have easily, if you really wanted those scenes to play out, you could have either had me roll and I'm gonna always fail regardless of what I roll, which that's kind of scummy. Is the better word, more polite word to use for that, which, because if you roll, it should have effect. Or you could have told me, it doesn't matter what you do, you just don't have the proper tools to open this lock.
Right, and me personally, I think that takes away some of the essence and the chance that happens within a role-playing game. So unless, where Percy went to earlier, which is you have kind of this core set of thought about your world, right?
Yeah.
And if something violates the rule of common sense, I'd have a problem. That's where it's like, again, the little scenario that Daniel went through, as a GM, I'm going to say, okay, look, we have crossed into ridiculousness. That's not happening. Now, I mean, maybe if it was a Mythos tomb, then you could go down, but then you'd have consequences. You'd have sanity loss. You'd have other things that go with it, right? Where, let's just face it, that's the way Lovecraft works.
Yeah.
It's weird and obnoxious and crazy, and it's out there, right? So in that scenario, maybe that's how you decipher the book, right?
Yeah.
But that really was when your character did what he was supposed to do as an investigative journalist.
Yeah.
Let me pick a lock, and he had a huge success on this. No, okay, it's over with. But I didn't mean that I had to give you all the information in the book.
Correct.
Well, that's true.
So that was where the storyline kind of twisted a little bit from where I had my prep and my notes and a few things that were sitting there. Is, again, spoiler alert, that's why the language changed in the book.
Ah, that's okay.
Nice.
I regret my choice anyways. I should have stayed there and deciphered that book, but sorry. I need another mat right here just to soften more sound.
You get one of these boom stands.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I gotta do that.
So the way that I subvert things like that is through a mechanic in a book called Blades in the Dark. That is a very rough around the edges RPG, but has a lot of really, really good mechanics inside of it that I can port over into any game that I want to play. And that's called progress clocks. And so basically what I'll do is, like, if in that scenario you've got a lock to pick, I would put two clocks up against each other. One is how well you're picking this lock, and I'll give it stages of, like, pick this lock, and then maybe it takes different stages to actually pick that one lock, or maybe it's like a Russian nesting doll where you open that lock and then there's another door behind it, like something like that. In Call of Cthulhu, that's not outlandish.
Well, it's not outlandish, but the way that I had described that journal initially, that wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, but like you could do a progress clock of, like, okay, like I unlocked the journal, like, to this clock would be called Deciphering the Key. And, like, so you unlock the lock, you copy down some of the text, and like give us a progress clock to do that. And then also over on the other side, I have a progress clock of a bad thing that's going to happen. That as that clock fills up when you guys fail, or as maybe just you do anything, like this clock is filling up, and when it gets to the end, something bad happens, like a challenge occurs of some type that, like, well, maybe you got the book open, maybe you didn't, but now you're, I don't know, getting sucked in the atmosphere. I don't know. I'm just making up stuff at this point, but that's just kind of the general idea, is like two opposing clocks that are filling up at once.
Well, I can see that, and I can see that working, and it's just and we all have our own unique style, right?
Yes, we do.
Which is why when you turned around in that game and said, well, part of my house includes this library, I was like, oh, well, that could be interesting. Let's go ahead and let that one happen.
I mean, I lost sanity during that.
Yes, you did.
Listen, I had $40,000 sitting in my back pocket. I would have bought the library if I needed to. You let me have a credit rating of 80, bud.
Hey, you know what? That's on you. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to buy your way out of every situation.
No, but I will keep producing mysterious bottles of scotch as we go.
I'm okay with that.
That's my key bribing tool.
Yeah, we noticed.
As long, and I'll just keep throwing more Middle Eastern guys at you.
Okay.
Well, all right.
Yeah, I don't know.
What? I mean,
where
I
you plan to go for that.
No, I was going to ask another question that kind of segues from that.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do one more question.
The allowing multiple skill checks of a thing. So, say I had failed the first time to pick that lock.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have allowed me to attempt it again?
Absolutely. The game mechanics in Call of Cthulhu specifically state that you can push any roll. But when you push that roll, other than a luck, okay? But when you push that roll, there is a potential consequence. I don't have to tell you what the potential consequence is, but I like the way that mechanic works out, which is, I'm going to go ahead and push my luck here and try it again. Maybe it's you snap the lock mechanism and now it's frozen. It's frozen shut. You've broken the gears inside, right?
Okay.
I mean, it could be any number of things to the point of which, like, whatever you're using to pick with, that broke. So now, if you no longer have the tools or the means to get a hold of the tools again, then now take a 5%, reduction against your skill.
Okay.
I mean, it ebbs and flows in that way. I like that one. Now, in games where it's like Star Wars, where it's, okay, I'm going to shoot my blaster. I missed. Can I push it? No, I don't think so. It doesn't make sense, right?
I'm not necessarily meaning like a reroll. Maybe push is actually described differently, or I'm understanding it differently. But like if say my first attempt in Star Wars is to hack that computer, I fail miserably. But I mean, technically, 5 minutes later, I can attempt again.
You'd have to give me a new story reason as to why. That's the way I would rule that. You would have to give me a viable story reason as to what changes the result from the first time.
Okay. That's one of my curiosity ones, because that also implies to other people doing the same role when they not necessarily have the reason to. Like when you have multiple people and it's like, oh, I'm gonna search this. Well, I'm going to search the room, and then now I'm going to search the room, and then now I'm going to search the room.
Oh, I think for games like Genesis and Star Wars, that's a little less cut and dry. So let's take your hacking, for example.
Yeah.
I think at that point you have to take into account the types of dice rolled.
Yeah.
So your normal, regular, like the purple dice, are just called difficulty dice. This is the difficulty to do the thing. If that's upgraded into a challenge die, that means there's something else. This isn't just the natural me trying to hack a thing. There's a firewall. There's something in place that stops me from getting there. If I fail because of the red dice, then I won't let you try the check again.
Okay.
Because there's a challenge that is in the way that has surpassed what you're able to do.
All right.
If you fail because of the purple dice, though, that's just you effed up. You missed a key. You put a period where there didn't need to be a period. Like it's a totally different, because they're narrative dice. Now in a D20 system or something like Legend of the Five Rings or Fate or Call of Cthulhu, that's less. You're able to do that less because you don't have different types of dice that tell you what it is you're trying to do.
I think the challenge that, if I'm getting this right from what you were saying, I think the challenge that he's going to is if a player knowingly fails a check and having the next player jump in and say, "Oh, I can do this."
Yeah.
That's to me that's metagaming, right? Gotcha. Whereas bit, in Star Wars, you can assist somebody up front. Now if there's a narrative reason why, okay, you're going into a room and both of you go opposite directions from each other, both checks would be viable.
Yeah. Well,
right. But if you're going in and then you step in, everybody steps in, and one person says, "I want to search the room," and everyone else has a thumb somewhere, then guess what? If you didn't assist them in the first place, it's in the air.
That's kind of where we're going at. And the failing the check one, I have a pretty nasty one for deciphering motives. I won't tell you if you pass or fail. I'll just say, even if they're telling you the truth, I'll just look at you square in the eye. He's telling you the truth. If he's lying, he's telling you the truth. If you failed, passed, whatever. Or maybe maybe you failed and he was telling you the truth. He's lying. He's telling you the truth. You'll never know.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to move past people trying to play against the GM, which that seems to have gotten closer to how a lot of people have been role-playing.
That's how role-playing worked in the 90s and early 2000s, and even earlier. I don't know. I wasn't alive before then, so I can't vouch for those times.
Excuse me?
I was born in 90, bud.
Well, role-playing's always dependent on who's playing, but I think what he's saying is...
forget you're that...
Yes, he's a youngin.
I'm the baby at the table, guys.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying, what you specifically asked is, could you just wait 5 minutes and do it again? Yeah. Can you keep doing it? Yeah. When I'm running, if someone else wants to step in, it's like a different perspective. So they may accomplish a task that you can't because they're looking at it with a different set of eyes.
I think that's true. Yeah.
You know, and so you just don't know. I like your description of the narrative dice, which is one of the things I like so much about narrative dice, is the dice help you make decisions that when it's just a pass-fail situation, a lot of times too, it's how bad. Like when I'm DMing, it's how bad. Did you fail by 5? Did you fail by 10? Did you succeed by 5? So it's trying to put some of what other systems have in place to help with that a little bit.
Those gray areas.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
It also depends on what happens in between your attempts. If you try to hack a computer and you fail, and the bad guy shoots the computer, you're not hacking in again.
Yeah.
Or if you're trying to hack a computer and fail, but then somebody finds the floppy disk, maybe you can try again. There's new intel.
Do you have
you're
a floppy
too young.
disk?
You've never seen a floppy disk, sir.
Hey, the floppy disk was the most dangerous utensil according to all the cartoons I watched growing up.
That is true.
Gargoyles, Power Rangers, all of them. Floppy disks, big no-no. Don't touch them.
They could end the world.
They could end the world. They have the nuke codes.
Well, I think we're going to end the session on "Don't Touch the Floppy Disk."
Don't touch the floppy. That's the title of this year.
You want a hard drive, not a floppy disk.
That's right.
That is a great place to end.
We'll see you guys next week. Keep on adventuring.
Good one.